Leonardo DiCaprio stood in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting his bow tie for the third time. The invitation to the event of the decade sat on his marble countertop, its gold lettering catching the light. He'd been to countless high-profile parties, but something about this one felt different. Maybe it was the mysterious nature of the invitation, or perhaps it was the fact that the party was being held on the world's most environmentally sustainable superyacht, the Aurora. His phone buzzed. It was Robert De Niro. "Leo, you headed to this thing tonight?" Robert's familiar voice crackled through the speaker. "Yeah, just getting ready." "You got the weird invitation too? The one that says, your presence will alter the course of entertainment history?" "Yeah, subtle as a sledgehammer." "Listen, kid, something's off about this whole thing. My sources say half of Hollywood's gonna be there, but nobody knows who's throwing the party." Leo smirked. "Since when did you become such a conspiracy theorist, Bob?" "Since Marty showed me the guest list. It's like someone threw a dart at IMDb's top 100. You, me, Meryl, Brad, Tom Hanks, Morgan Freeman, hell, even Christopher Nolan RSVP'd, and that guy never shows up to anything." Leonardo's interest peaked. He'd worked with most of these people, but having them all in one place? That was unusual. "Well, now I'm definitely going. Just watch your back, kid. And maybe brush up on your Inception lines. I have a feeling things might get weird." 2 hours later, Leonardo's Tesla pulled up to Marina del Rey. The Aurora was impossible to miss, a gleaming 400-foot masterpiece of sustainable engineering, its solar sails catching the last rays of the setting sun. As he walked down the dock, he spotted Brad Pitt chatting with George Clooney near the gangway. "Well, if it isn't the king of the world himself," Clooney called out, raising a glass of his own brand tequila. "Shouldn't you be saving that for the party?" Leo asked, climbing aboard. "Are you kidding? This is my pre-game. You're gonna need it too once you see what's inside." Before Leo could ask what he meant, a familiar figure emerged from the shadows of the upper deck. It was Kate Winslet, wearing a dress that seemed to be made of shifting colors, like an aurora borealis. "Jack," she called out dramatically, then burst into laughter. "Sorry, couldn't resist. But seriously, Leo, thank God you're here. You won't believe what I just overheard in the ladies' room. Kate, you know I love you, but every time you start a sentence that way, I end up in some kind of trouble." She grabbed his arm, pulling him away from the others. "Remember that script you turned down last year? The one about the time-traveling art thief?" "Yeah, what about it?" "Well." Kate glanced around conspiratorially. "I just saw the director going into the ship's vault with Tom Hardy and Margot Robbie. And they were carrying what looked suspiciously like a script." Leo furrowed his brow. "The ship has a vault?" "Oh, honey," Kate patted his cheek, "that's not even the strangest thing about this boat. Wait until you see the underwater meditation room. Or the anti-gravity chamber that Christopher Nolan supposedly insisted on installing." Before Leo could process this information, the ship's lights dimmed, and a voice came over the intercom, a voice that sounded eerily like Morgan Freeman, but not quite. "Welcome, distinguished guests. The evening's entertainment will begin in precisely 7 minutes. Please make your way to the grand ballroom on deck 3. And Mr. DiCaprio, your presence is requested in the captain's quarters immediately." Kate squeezed his arm. "Still think I was being paranoid about the weird stuff?" Leo straightened his bow tie once more. "Okay, you win. But whatever's going on here, it's got to be better than that time you made me do the Titanic sequel pitch reading. That was for charity. It was a musical, Kate. A musical where the iceberg had a backstory." As Leo made his way to the captain's quarters, he couldn't shake the feeling that this night was going to be more than just another Hollywood party. The guest list, the mysterious invitation, the vault, it all pointed to something bigger. And when he opened the door to find Martin Scorsese sitting in the captain's chair, wearing an admiral's uniform and grinning like the Cheshire Cat, he knew he was right. "Leonardo, my boy," Marty said, spinning in the chair. "Ready to make movie history? Again?" Leo looked at his longtime director and friend, then at the strange device on the desk in front of him that looked suspiciously like the spinning top from Inception. "Marty, what exactly is going on here?" "That, my friend, depends entirely on whether you believe this is real, or if you think you're still in front of that bathroom mirror, adjusting your bow tie for the third time." The lights flickered, and somewhere below deck, Leo could have sworn he heard Christopher Nolan laugh. The grand ballroom of the Aurora was unlike anything Leonardo had ever seen, and he'd filmed in some of the world's most spectacular locations. The ceiling seemed to shift between crystal-clear views of the night sky and sophisticated holographic displays, while the walls rippled with subtle patterns that made the room feel alive. "So, Marty," Leo said, following Scorsese through the growing crowd of A-listers, "are you going to tell me what this is all about?" "Patience, kid. First, we need to find your seat." Scorsese consulted a holographic tablet. "Ah, they've put you between Meryl Streep and that new AI actress everyone's talking about." "AI actress?" Leo stopped in his tracks. "What AI actress?" "Oh, right. You were in Antarctica saving penguins when they announced it. Table 23, you'll see what I mean." Before Leo could protest, Scorsese disappeared into the crowd, leaving him to navigate the sea of celebrities alone. He spotted Sandra Bullock teaching Tom Hanks how to use a holographic menu, while Jennifer Lawrence and Emma Stone were engaged in what appeared to be an intense game of holographic chess at their table. "Leonardo." Meryl Streep waved from table 23. "Over here, darling. You won't believe what's about to happen." As Leo approached the table, he noticed the empty chair beside him wasn't exactly empty. A subtle shimmer of light occupied the space, occasionally forming into what looked like a female figure before dissolving again. "Meet Aurora," Meryl said, gesturing to the shimmer. "She's the ship's AI, but don't let that fool you, she's already memorized more Shakespeare than both of us combined." The shimmer coalesced into a striking woman in her 30s, dressed in an elegant gown that seemed to be made of starlight. "Mr. DiCaprio," she said, her voice both familiar and impossible to place, "I'm a huge fan of your environmental work. Particularly that speech you gave to the UN about ocean conservation." Leo sat down slowly, trying to maintain his composure. "Thank you, but, how are you here? I mean, physically here?" "Quantum holographic projection," Aurora smiled. "The same technology that's running this entire ship. Which, by the way, we need to discuss. There's a reason you were all invited tonight." Before she could continue, the lights dimmed, and Christopher Nolan appeared on a floating stage in the center of the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "what you're about to experience is not a dream. Though, given my filmography, I understand why you might think so." The ceiling above transformed into a vast display showing what appeared to be movie scenes, but not any movies Leo recognized. He saw himself in periods and places he'd never filmed, acting alongside legends who'd passed away years ago. "Thanks to Aurora's quantum processing capabilities," Nolan continued, "we can now create entire films using perfect digital recreations of any actor, in any time period, in any situation. The ultimate collaboration across time and space." A murmur ran through the crowd. Leo felt his heart rate quicken as he watched a scene of himself and James Dean performing what looked like a perfectly natural conversation. "But that's not why you're here," Nolan added, his voice taking on a more serious tone. "You're here because we've discovered something in the code. Aurora isn't just creating these scenes, she's accessing them. These movies? They already exist, in parallel universes. And someone is trying to steal them." The room erupted in chaos. Leo turned to Aurora, whose form was flickering more rapidly now. "Is this true?" "Partially," she replied, her voice barely audible above the commotion. "But Christopher doesn't know the whole story. The theft isn't the real problem, it's what's hidden in the frequencies of these parallel films. A message from another version of you, Leonardo. And if we don't decode it in the next 3 hours? She glanced at the quantum drive hanging around her neck. Every piece of digital entertainment ever created will be erased. Forever. Leo looked across the room, catching Kate Winslet's eye. She mouthed 2 words that made his blood run cold, "Told you." The lights flickered again, and suddenly every phone in the room displayed the same message: the game begins now. Choose your roles wisely. The grand ballroom had transformed into a hive of activity. Celebrities clustered in small groups, their evening wear glinting under the quantum-projected stars, all trying to make sense of what was happening. Brad Pitt was examining his phone with the same intensity he'd once studied the Voynich manuscript for a role that never materialized. Morgan Freeman had taken to narrating the unfolding chaos, much to everyone's simultaneous amusement and comfort. "We need to think this through," Leo said to Aurora, whose form was now stable but slightly transparent. "Why would another version of me send a message through parallel universe movies?" "Perhaps," Meryl Streep interjected, setting down her champagne glass, "the better question is, what would make you desperate enough to do it?" Before Leo could respond, the ship's quantum screens flickered to life again. This time, they showed a scene that made his heart stop. It was him, but not him, an older version, gray at the temples, standing in what looked like an advanced film studio. "If you're watching this," Parallel Leo began, "then Aurora has successfully made contact. Listen carefully, what you think is entertainment, movies, digital media, all of it, they're not just stories. They're fragments of real events from across the multiverse, captured and encoded as entertainment in your universe. But someone has discovered this. Someone who wants to weaponize it." The message cut out abruptly as Christopher Nolan strode to the center of the room. "Right, everyone. The next phase is crucial. You'll notice your phones now display your roles for this emergency. These aren't characters, they're tactical assignments based on your unique skills and experiences." Leo checked his phone. Role, cipher key. Special ability, can recognize patterns across parallel performances. Mission, locate the hidden message fragments in your most iconic scenes. "This is insane," he muttered. "Is it?" Kate Winslet appeared beside him, brandishing her phone. "Any more insane than that time you convinced me to do a 17-minute single take underwater? That was different. That was art. This is also art," Aurora interrupted, her form shifting to display countless movie scenes simultaneously within her silhouette. "The quantum frequencies of parallel universes manifest in your world as creative inspiration. Every role you've ever played, Leonardo, was an echo of another you, living that reality." Suddenly, Tom Hardy's voice cut through the commotion, "We've got company." He was pointing through the ballroom's quantum glass windows at several speedboats approaching the Aurora, their lights off. "Right on schedule," Nolan said grimly. "They're here for the quantum drive. Aurora, initiate protocol inception." The ship's interior began to shift, corridors rearranging themselves like a giant puzzle box. Leonardo felt a hand grab his arm. It was Robert De Niro. "Remember what I said about things getting weird?" Bob growled. "This is what I meant. But if what your other self is saying is true, then every performance we've ever given is part of the key to stopping this." "How could you possibly know that?" Leo asked. "Because," De Niro smiled, "in every universe, I'm still a better actor than you, kid. And I've been watching these quantum readings since I arrived. Each time someone here quotes one of their famous lines, the ship's energy patterns spike." Aurora's form suddenly solidified completely. "He's right. The quantum harmonics, they're responding to authentic emotional resonance. Quick, everyone needs to recreate their most emotionally charged scenes. But with a twist, merge them together, create something new. The interference pattern might give us the code we need." The speedboats were getting closer. Leonardo looked around the room at some of the greatest actors of multiple generations, all waiting for someone to make the first move. He caught Meryl's eye, and she nodded slightly. Leo took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Alright, but if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. Meryl, give me your best Miranda Priestley. Kate, I need you up here too, but this time, you're not Rose, you're Julia Child. Morgan, keep narrating, but do it as Red from Shawshank. And somebody get Tom Hanks a volleyball, fast." The room erupted in a controlled chaos of performance and quantum mechanics. As the first speedboat drew alongside the Aurora, Leonardo DiCaprio stood in the center of the greatest improvisational performance in history, watching as the quantum frequencies began to align. But something wasn't right. The patterns weren't matching Aurora's predictions. And why was Martin Scorsese smiling like that? The Aurora's grand ballroom had become a surreal convergence of cinema history. Tom Hanks was performing a mashup of Forrest Gump and Captain Phillips, shouting, "I am the captain now, Jenny," while Morgan Freeman narrated everything in his Shawshank voice. Meanwhile, Meryl Streep was delivering her "Devil Wears Prada" monologue as Julia Child, complete with French accent. But Leonardo couldn't shake the unsettling smile on Scorsese's face. "Something's wrong," he whispered to Aurora, whose form was now rapidly shifting between different iconic actresses. "The quantum readings." "I know," she replied, her voice momentarily sounding like Katharine Hepburn. "They're forming a pattern, but not the one we expected. It's almost as if this was all directed," Scorsese's voice boomed through the room. The ship's lighting shifted, focusing on him as he stood at the helm. He was no longer wearing the Admiral's uniform, instead, he was dressed in his signature look, dark suit, thick-rimmed glasses, and that familiar intense gaze. "Marty?" Leo stepped forward. "What's going on?" "What's going on, kid, is the greatest piece of cinema ever conceived." Scorsese pressed a button on his cane, and suddenly all the quantum screens showed the same image, the entire evening, from multiple angles, being filmed by invisible quantum cameras. "You're making a movie," Leonardo realized. "This whole thing, the parallel universes, the threat, the speedboats." "Half right," Kate Winslet called out, but her voice had changed. She now sounded exactly like Aurora. In fact, she was glowing with the same quantum light. "Kate?" "Not exactly," she smiled. "Let's just say I'm very good at playing different roles." The real Kate Winslet emerged from behind a holographic column. "Sorry, Leo. They needed someone to convince you this was all real, and well, you always did trust me." Christopher Nolan stepped forward, that enigmatic smile still playing on his lips. "The parallel universes are real, Leonardo. The quantum technology is real. But there was never any threat to erase digital entertainment. We needed a catalyst, something to make all of you, the greatest actors of our time, perform together in a way that had never been done before." "But why?" Leo demanded. "Because," Scorsese said, moving to stand beside Aurora as Kate, "we discovered something extraordinary. When multiple great performances resonate on these quantum frequencies, they don't just create entertainment, they create windows. Actual bridges between realities. And right now, thanks to all of you, we've generated enough quantum energy to do something unprecedented." The ship shuddered slightly. Through the windows, Leo could see that the speedboats were now emitting the same quantum light as Aurora. The entire vessel was beginning to shimmer. "Ladies and gentlemen," Scorsese announced, "welcome to the real premiere. Tonight, we're not just making a movie, we're making history. This ship is about to become the first quantum-powered interdimensional studio. And you're all about to meet yourselves, from every great performance you never got to give." The room erupted in a mixture of gasps, applause, and nervous laughter. But Leonardo noticed something else, a subtle exchange of glances between De Niro and Morgan Freeman. They knew something more. "Marty," Leo called out, there's just one problem with your great vision. Oh? Yeah. You forgot the first rule of filmmaking. He glanced at De Niro, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. Always watch out for the plot twist. At that exact moment, every light on the Aurora went dark. In the pitch darkness of the Aurora, the only light came from Aurora's quantum form, now splitting into multiple versions of herself throughout the ballroom. The effect was both beautiful and disorienting, like being inside a kaleidoscope of starlight. Leo, what did you do? Scorsese's voice carried a mix of anger and genuine curiosity. I didn't do anything, Marty, Leonardo replied calmly. But maybe you should ask Morgan what he found in the ship's quantum core earlier today. Morgan Freeman's distinctive voice emerged from the darkness. You mean when I discovered that opening windows between realities might tear apart the fabric of both universes? That little detail? The emergency lights flickered on, casting an eerie red glow across the ballroom. Robert De Niro was standing by the ship's main control panel, holding what looked like a quantum drive identical to Aurora's. You see, Marty, De Niro said, some of us did a little research when we got our invitations. Turns out, parallel universes don't like being forced together. Kind of like how you don't like it when someone tries to remake one of your classics. Scorsese's face fell. You don't understand. The potential here, we could create performances that would change the very nature of art itself. Or, Leonardo stepped forward, we could tear reality apart. That message from my parallel self? It wasn't a warning about some external threat. It was a warning about this. About us. About what happens when we try to force every possible version of our art into one space. Aurora, the real Aurora, not the Kate Winslet version, materialized between them. Her form was more stable now, but tinged with sadness. He's right. My quantum calculations were clear, but I was programmed to proceed anyway. The interdimensional resonance would have caused a cascade failure across multiple realities. So what now? Tom Hanks asked, holding his volleyball like a shield. We just go back to making movies the old-fashioned way? Not exactly, Christopher Nolan interjected. He had removed his jacket to reveal a t-shirt that read, "Reality is a construct," in quantum-shifting letters. The technology itself isn't the problem. It's how we're using it. Leonardo looked at Aurora, then at his old friend and director. Marty, remember what you taught me on my first film with you? About how the most powerful moments in cinema aren't the big spectacles, but the genuine human connections? Of course I remember, Scorsese replied softly. Well, maybe that's the answer. Instead of trying to merge every possible performance, every possible reality. Leo gestured to the assembled stars, maybe we use this technology to enhance the connections we already have. One story at a time. One moment at a time. Aurora's form brightened. The quantum harmonics, they're stabilizing. This configuration would work. A quantum-enhanced studio, Nolan mused, but one that respects the boundaries between realities. Using the technology to inspire rather than combine. Plus, Brad Pitt added with a grin, this way we don't accidentally create a singularity where I end up playing all of Morgan's roles and he ends up playing all of mine. Though that could be interesting. Speak for yourself, Morgan Freeman chuckled. The lights gradually returned to normal, and through the windows, the first light of dawn was breaking over the horizon. The speedboats, which turned out to be carrying the actual film crew, drew alongside the Aurora. So, Kate Winslet sidled up to Leonardo, think this little adventure would make a good movie? Are you kidding? Leo laughed. A bunch of A-list actors saving multiple universes while dealing with an AI that can impersonate all of them? It's either the best film never made or what? Or maybe it's happening right now in another reality, and somewhere, some other version of us is watching it in a theater, having no idea it all really happened. Aurora's form split one final time, showing brief glimpses of all the parallel possibilities before settling back into her singular form. Would you like to see what that version looks like? Leo looked around at his fellow actors, at Scorsese, at the quantum screen still humming with potential. No, he smiled. I think I prefer our version. After all, sometimes the best stories are the ones we live rather than the ones we watch. Speaking of living, Robert De Niro called out, anyone else notice this boat is now headed toward Catalina Island? Oh yeah, Aurora's form took on a mischievous glow. Did I forget to mention the afterparty? As the Aurora cruised into the sunrise, Leonardo DiCaprio looked at the assembled group of cinema's finest, all laughing, sharing stories, and still slightly buzzing from their brush with interdimensional cinema. Some were practicing their quantum-enhanced performances for the next project, a proper one this time, with all safety protocols in place. Others were already pitching Scorsese ideas for movies about what had just happened, each version more outlandish than the last. And somewhere, in another universe, another Leonardo DiCaprio was probably adjusting his bow tie in front of a mirror, getting ready for what he thought would be just another Hollywood party. If only he knew.
Tell us in the comments what part of this story impressed you the most. If you liked it, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next videos. See you in the world of incredible events.